Ever wondered what actually separates the billion-dollar tech founders from the brilliant engineers who never quite make it? Well, I've studied over 1,000 of the world's top tech founders, spending over 500 hours on Forbes list, interviews, and personal case studies. I also spent years walking the same exact path from a Fortune 500 developer to running a multi-seven-figure software consultancy. And what I found were patterns. Quiet, underrated behaviors that led to massive success. In this video, I'll break down the 7 lessons that transforms engineers into unicorn builders. No fluff, no theory, just what actually works and what might be the missing link in your story. The first lesson is the one that actually unlocked billions in revenue for nearly every single founder that I studied. And yet, most engineers miss it completely. I want you to tell me if this sounds familiar. You're whiteboarding your next big thing and somehow AI, crypto, VR, or whatever the heck is trending nowadays sneaks its way into the pitch. And before you go on to invest 6 months and your sanity, let me tell you a story on where the real money actually is at. Let's take Patrick and John Collison. You see, they weren't trying to change the world. In fact, they were just sick of how bad payment integrations were. Broken APIs, outdated documents, and nearly every single product had the same exact bottlenecks. And one night, they looked at each other and said, well, this is frankly ridiculous. Why can't payments just be simple? So that's exactly what they did. They built something for themselves, a small internal fix. And this small internal fix came to be known as Stripe, a company now worth $95 billion, processing hundreds of billions of dollars in payments every single year. One might take a look at this and think they struck gold. But no, they didn't strike gold. In fact, all they did was pick up a shovel and start digging where nobody else was looking. The best business ideas are hiding in the annoying and repetitive tasks that nobody simply wants to touch. And that's the stuff that actually makes billionaires. So the first lesson that these tech founders did was not chase what's cool, but rather solve a sticky, boring pain. Because if you do that, then you'll unlock the same kind of leverage that they did, which allowed them to scale to billions in revenue. But if that leverage isn't actually structured right, it will snap completely. And this next lesson is how billion-dollar founders avoid the trap of wasted momentum and get to build something that has the ability to scale on its own. You see, I've seen so many devs uncover a gold mine and yet somehow they always fumble it. And if you've ever felt stuck, whether in a job, a product, or a strategy, you've probably done what most people would do: tweak things. And that's natural. A landing page here, a different pricing plan there, a new color scheme over there. But deep down, you're not really optimizing, you are guessing. So let's take Elon for this example. He was days away from actually shutting down SpaceX. Rocket prices were so high that they were simply unsustainable. And his advisors straight up just told him, man, you need to raise more money. But instead of reacting, Musk zoomed out and asked one question that nobody really had until that point. What do the raw materials for a rocket actually cost? And he ran the numbers, and the answers shocked him because the materials were cheap and the markup on them was simply insane. So he said, screw it, we're going to build our own rockets. And that's exactly what they did. That question, that one simple systematic question saved the entire company. And in doing so, actually rewrote the economics of space exploration in general. Many might think it was a genius moment, but it wasn't. It was simply a first principles thinking under pressure. And this one small approach was the difference between the collapse of an aerospace company and the first ever company in history to catch a space rocket. So the second lesson that Elon and other successful founders shared was do not guess your way forward. If you are stuck, pause, zoom out, see the entire system as a whole, and that's when you earn the right to move again. But even if you do everything right, you find a problem, you think in systems, you take strategic action, the results don't always show up. And this is actually where most engineers quietly give up, because there's really only one guaranteed way to fail in business. And now thinking about it, in life in general, I would say, if you obsess over how long it takes to succeed, then you are destined to fail. You see, for years, Dylan Field's vision for real-time design collaboration went ignored. He launched Figma back in 2012. No traction, no buzz, no press, no momentum, nothing whatsoever. For 4 years, it felt like Dylan's work was getting tossed into an empty void. But in that silence, not once did he give up. It wasn't a sign of failure or misdirection, but rather it was the sound of compounding. Yes, sometimes the sound of silence can be your compass to being on the right track. And speed, syncing, and multiplayer design were compounding. No one had ever seen it yet until they did. And building those many years in silence, all of a sudden, Figma grew in popularity, and it became so big in 2022 that Adobe offered $20 billion to acquire them. And in that moment, Dylan's success may have seemed quote-unquote overnight, but only he had known that he was building in silence for over a decade. It's as if you were watching a pot of water boil. Silent tension until all of a sudden it started steaming everywhere. So take this as a reminder that every successful founder in any industry continuously pushes the boulder. And once the boulder crests, the world will notice, but not the hill that you just rolled it up on. But right after that push, growth will stall. You're doing everything right and somehow nothing moves. And that moment kills more potential founders than any bad idea ever really could. So the fourth lesson is how the top 1% push past that stall by doing this one thing really, really well. You see, in New York, the Airbnb founders found it pretty much impossible to get hosts to sign up on their platform. And instead of launching new features or changing the font size on their landing page, the founders did something radical, something you wouldn't expect out of a software engineer. They picked up a camera and started knocking on doors. And they offered to photograph people's houses completely for free, one host at a time. And it was awkward, it was slow, and it was absolutely unscalable. But it worked. Listings shot up, and those very same listings looked really amazing. And better yet, each of those listings, each of those hosts told a friend. So the gritty, hands-on grind, well, ended up working out, and it was the backbone of Airbnb's early growth. Because you see, too many developers hide behind their screens, optimizing things that don't really quite matter. But every single founder that I studied did the exact opposite. They put themselves in the trenches, at least in the beginning. That grind, that was the backbone of Airbnb's early growth. Guess what? They didn't just wait for the wind. They took action and actually flew when the wind came. Just like every other successful tech founders, you cannot hide behind the screen and not do the uncomfortable work that actually leads to growth. So you need to talk to people and actually improve the product in the trenches. And as I was looking through all 1,000 founders, do you know what separates you from them? It's not talent, it's not timing, it's that they learned sales, positioning, offers, and systems. These 4 things. So if you're tired of actually building in silence and you're ready now to create something that people will actually pay for, such that you can actually have your financial freedom and everything else that you really want, then you need to check out Code to CEO. It's not a course, it's a system. The link will be in the description below. With that out of the way, let's get back to the last 3 lessons. This next lesson is brutal, but necessary, because I watched so many brilliant engineers delay the one thing that actually builds a business. So here's the harsh truth. If nobody is paying you, it is not a product, it is a prototype. And if you're waiting for it to be perfect before charging somebody, you are not refining, you are stalling. And Nathan Barry actually understood this. He had a half-baked concept for an email tool. And instead of building it in secret, he emailed 10 creators. He pitched the idea and asked them to pay upfront. Some said no, and that was completely fine. But a few said yes. And those early believers, they funded his MVP. They gave him feedback, they became loyal customers, and today, ConvertKit makes over $30 million a year. Not because it was polished, but because Nathan asked the questions that nobody wanted to ask. You see, too many devs want a parachute before they jump, but you don't know if your parachute will work until you actually take the leap. So, lesson number 5, take the leap. But once you actually take the leap and people start paying, a new trap will open up. Everyone starts giving advice. Some of it sounds smart, most of it sounds familiar, but if you follow all the rules, you'll quietly build a business you end up hating. The sixth lesson is all about how top founders broke the rules strategically and built something that actually felt right for themselves. But for some people, it doesn't feel right, and the more advice you follow, the more confused you will get. For example, the founder of Basecamp, previously known as 37 Signals, learned the lesson to strategically break the rules. Jason Fried and his team decided to give the middle finger to the advice that was being whispered into his ear and chose not to raise money from a VC. They didn't chase the hockey stick growth in front of them. They didn't even try to dominate the market, but instead they asked what kind of business reflects our values. And thus they focused on three things: profitability, simplicity, and sustainability. And you know what they got for not listening to the traditional path and breaking the startup rules? $100 million plus empire. They were walking calmly with a map, knowing exactly where to go, while others were running marathons simply blindfolded. So understand that you don't need to play somebody else's game. You can build the business that you want, just like Jason Fried did. But even when you tune out the noise and you choose your own path, there's still one voice that's left that is even louder than everybody else's. And that voice is yours. You're most likely waiting for the perfect co-founder, or you're telling yourself that you need more time, more money, and more confidence. But deep down, you know you're simply just stalling and delaying it. The seventh and final lesson is what every single founder needs to face: the internal resistance that quietly kills more dreams than failure ever actually will or did. A great example of this is Melanie Parkins. You see, Melanie Parkins wasn't technical. She had no VC connections, and she got rejected over 100 times. Every single door she knocked, it got slammed shut. Every single person she pitched, she got laughed at. But she didn't stop. She kept pitching and selling the vision that she had in her mind the entire time. And fast forward to now, Canva has over 100 million users and is one of the most powerful design companies that ever existed in history. So you need to understand that you need to commit to the journey you know you have to go on, even if you don't quite feel ready right now. Because let me tell you, unfortunately, you'll never ever really feel ready. And this is because you don't warm up by staring at the pool, you warm up by actually jumping in and swimming. Understand that courage isn't confidence, it's commitment without guarantees. And all these successful tech founders went all in and, most importantly, bet on themselves, even if nobody actually believed them. So understand that you don't need to be a genius. You don't need endless funding, nor do you need a perfect team. Sure, these are all great things, but all you really need is to spot problems worth solving, thinking like a system builder, pushing when nobody else is watching, doing what actually makes you uncomfortable to grow, charging early and taking that leap, breaking the rules, just sometimes, and committing even when it's scary. Because that's what the top 1,000 founders did, and that's exactly what you can do too. So please, stop waiting and start building the future that you actually want to see ahead of you. And I hope that in 2 years from now, when I do a video like this again, I'll have to study 1,001 tech founders because you made it onto the list. So if you're wanting to start your journey, I put together a free PDF called The 7 Patterns of Successful Tech Founders. It includes all 7 lessons, plus frameworks and examples that I simply didn't have the time to show here in this video. As always, thank you so much for watching and have a good one.